Hello, hello, and thanks for stopping by. This is Into the Breach for the Nintendo Switch, developed by Subset Games for a bunch of different platforms. It was released in 2018 and apparently is expected to release on Netflix as a mobile game. I didn't know they were going to offer games, but it seems like they might. Anyway, this is a strategy game, where one of the main threads is that you kinda travel in time. These giant monsters called the Mech have invaded and taken over Earth, and you're basically teleporting back in time to defend Earth before this invasion actually happens. It uses a turn-based system that's kind of like a game of chess, and it looks like it should be easy, but it really requires you to think. You pilot three main machines. You have a mech, a tank, and a piece of artillery. Each will have their own constraints related to movement, offensive range, and damage potential. As you get better, you will unlock different versions of these basic machine types, and if you keep your pilots alive long enough, they will start to unlock new skills and get better as well. This is really one of those titles that if you want to do well in the later stages, you really should be looking to perform extra well in the early ones, when it's a little easier to get your pilot's experience. I really won't go too much into tactics for this one. I've sunk plenty of time into it, but I'm not an expert by any means. There are tons of YouTube videos out there just talking about strategies, and if you start to get into this, you should probably give them a look. The game is a series of islands, each with a different topography. It could be a desert, it could be forest, or Arctic. And as you would expect, they each tend to have additional rules just related to the environment. On each island, there are various stages that you can select. This is the first place you need to start studying. When you click on an island, you can take a look at its individual stages. They're not all immediately going to be available to select, but what you can look at will have descriptions of the basic difficulty and any additional objectives that you can perform. This brings us to the objectives. You start a stage with various objectives and a limited amount of turns. The basic goal, of course, is to survive, which is you protecting civilians, infrastructure, and defeating enemies. But the specific level objectives are usually more than this. Maybe they want you to protect a generator, or a power plant, or not take a certain amount of damage. The more of these objectives that you can complete, the more experience you're going to get, and you can also get items, which ultimately upgrades your offense. The basic map is a grid, and it's not huge. You're going to find objects, topography, buildings, the Mech, of course. These are all things that you have to learn how to properly interact with. You can smash monsters into buildings, but the buildings might take damage, and it's something you're supposed to protect. You can push some monsters into water and they'll drown, or maybe smash them into a mountain or another monster. That's always fun to do because it causes everybody damage. It's great. The first thing you do in a stage is determine where to deploy your offense. You can drop them wherever, of course, but not all of your force has a movement range to go everywhere, so an incorrect initial placement will cost you later on. Each level only has a limited amount of turns, and we're not talking 15 or 20, we're talking 6 or 7 turns maybe, which means you don't have a lot of time to make mistakes. Once you set your offense, you're going to have to plan your attack. You're going to select your team one at a time, you're going to move and then attack. If you move, you can recall the move and start over. But once you attack, you've committed to the offense. You do have the ability to reset a turn once per battle, and although this is a great lifeline, they don't let you abuse it. Once only. And it only resets the turn, not the stage. You have to learn how to manage your team to the best of their capabilities, and how to move them around the playfield to defeat the enemies before they can damage you. One mistake can cause you to lose a vehicle and a pilot, so you really have to pay attention to everything that's on the board. The team is 3 different machines, and you have to be familiar with how each of them run. The mech has to be right next to an enemy if he wants to damage them. The tank can shoot from a distance. Your artillery can't damage an enemy in an adjoining square. They need distance. They all have their specific limits, but as you gain experience, you're going to unlock upgrades, and that's going to increase the weapons, the range, or the damage. But this is something that does not happen quickly, and if a pilot dies, they're gone, and you lose all that experience. You do have benefits over the Mech, of course. There are certainly more of them, but when they move, You do know what they're going to do their next turn. You know if they're going to attack and in what direction. The map shows you. Now you can get out of the way, or maybe push that monster away, so when they attack, they hit nothing. Or maybe if you're lucky, you can get them to hit another Vec for you. You also have a threshold of damage, of course, for each vehicle, but you can use this to your advantage. You can step in to take damage to protect a target, perhaps. Or you can stand on a spawn point and take a little damage, but prevent another Vec from spawning on the level. You can also heal during your turn if you'd like, but I kind of do this less frequently than I probably should. Sometimes it's obvious when you should do it, other times not so much. There are plenty of tactics that you can use to control the board, and learning the best way to manipulate your offense and control the enemy is really what this one is all about. With only 3 pieces to move around the board, you'd think it would be a simple one, but it's pretty complex. And that's before you get to the point of unlocking other clusters of vehicles and mechs. This is certainly not a fast game, and if you're into strategy games at all, this one is really worth a look. I keep sinking hours into this one and I love it. It feels good to completely control a level, especially after you've experienced what it's like to get completely destroyed, which is certainly going to happen. It's also a game that works really well in handheld mode on the Switch. I think there are plenty of great games that just don't feel good in handheld mode, but this one works great. Well, that's all I have today for Into the Breach for the Switch. If this is your type of video, please feel free to like and subscribe to the channel and all that good stuff, and thanks for stopping by to take a look. Hope to catch you on another video.